Welcome to Bet On. I'm Kelly Stewart, your host for this evening. We're going to break down the AFC with Gianni, the Greek gambler, and Marco D'Angelo. Thank you guys for tuning in live. We're so excited to be here. Drop your comments or questions in the chat. We're going to answer some of those along the way. This is our second week back. If you missed last week, you missed a hell of an NFC show. We're going to try to run through it just a little bit quicker today with the AFC. Just 1 week tomorrow. The NFL kicks off. Odds presented by our friends over at the Superbook Sportsbook at Superbook Sports on Twitter, aka the Westgate. Today's show, as I mentioned, will be a deep dive in all things AFC. I have UFC on the brain because I was just getting ready to introduce Gianni, the Greek gambler, our resident UFC expert, Marco D'Angelo, who has just been killing baseball. Marco, are you ready for the Kentucky Derby on Saturday?
Oh, Kelly, I live for it, but, it's weird. September for the Kentucky Derby, not only that part of it, but it's the second leg. We already had one of them, which was the Belmont back in June. So excited to see. 'Tis the law on Saturday, and we'll be breaking that down. Just give a little shout out to the show I do for horse racing, the Pony Pundits. That'll be Friday. You can check that out, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Myself and Sig Las Vegas will be breaking down the Derby, so tune into the Pony Pundits on Friday.
Awesome. My guy, VR, just killing the UFC game. VR, give the Bet On It listeners a little bit of info on what you're doing this weekend and what you've got on deck.
Yeah, you know me, Kelly. I tell it like it is. I'm coming off my worst month of entire 2020. Like, I was way ahead. In fact, sometimes you're like a standard deviation or two ahead of where you should be based on the amount of bets you made or the money you bet. And it happens. It happens in blackjack. It happens in sports. So I was expecting a little regression, but August was my worst month, and hopefully got that out of the way with 4 months left of 2020. Like I said, I had built such a good lead that I'm still so far comfortably ahead for 2020. And that's the benefit of focusing on the long term and not trying to win every single day. That's my goal, to place good bets, trusting that I really do have an edge. And if I eliminate randomness after 500 or so bets, if I really have an edge, I should be up. So after the first month or second month, I may not have placed enough, but after 5, 6, 7, I have. So that's why after the 8 months, I'm up a nice amount, even after a horrific August. But yeah, I couldn't be happier. September's here with so much to bet on. And of course, MMA has been really good for me up until the last 2 or 3 weeks. So hopefully a lot in store ahead, especially with football coming. Haven't even had a chance to dig into that to add to 2020 profits. So I'm excited. Next 4 months looks like a lot of opportunity to cash in.
Yeah, this is just unprecedented times with everything going on. We have so many sports. As I mentioned, we have horse racing, baseball, soccer, football, basketball, baseball even. This next 3 months is going to be really awesome. I'm excited for everything that's happening over at WagerTalk. You hit something on the head I wanted to touch on before we start the show. For those of you that are new to Bet On It, that is exactly what we try to do. We try to teach you guys how to make better bets. So again, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comment section. We'll get to those and really start to break down this AFC card for you. Marco, I'm going to start with you and the AFC East. We have the Bills, minus 125 to win the division. I know this is a Ralph Michaels question normally. When were the Patriots not the favorite to win the AFC East? This is kind of crazy. Patriots do come in second at plus 180 to win the division. Jets plus 1,000. Dolphins also plus 1,000. And we'll talk a little bit more about these season win totals as well. Marco, I'll give you first dibs on breaking down the AFC East.
Yeah, well, we'll go ahead and start with Buffalo, being that they are the favorite. And for me, it's put up or shut up time for Buffalo. This team has improved dramatically over the last 2 seasons, but now Josh Allen's got to make that next step in his progression. This is a team that was a top 10 team last year in turnover differential, and that's one of the reasons they had the success that they did. But note, 10 of Buffalo's games last year were decided by 7 points or less. So they came out on the right side of a lot of tight games. And considering that this is a team that only averaged 20 points a game last year, they got the most out of the minimum. What I'm concerned about with Buffalo is we move to this season, guys, in with this, high expectations and the season win total. And I did make a season win bet on this one. I'm taking the under because if you look at the schedule, there is a stretch with Buffalo from October 4th to November 1st. They play 3 out of 4 games on the road. And in that stretch, their lone home game is against Kansas City. So what a brutal stretch there. And then the other 2 games that they get after that brutal stretch, well, they got New England and Seattle. That's not going to be an easy task, and that's going to make or break their season when it comes to the season win total. The expectations of 9 wins because of everything that happened last year and because of Tom Brady changing addresses, there's just too much expectation for me. I can't take over 9 in this one. I'm betting under 9 wins on the Buffalo Bills.
You know what, Marco, you hit the nail on the head there when talking about the Pats. This is going to be the first time the Bills are a home favorite to the Pats for quite some time. VR, I'll kick it to you. Tell me what your thoughts are on the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I think coming into this season, they're as overvalued as you can get because of the changes in New England. I mean, New England's been the team to beat, obviously. They've outperformed the betting market since the Brady-Belichick era. And until they're out of the mix, arguably still the team to beat, right? But going into this season, that isn't the case. Everyone's expecting Buffalo to finally take over, to make that next step. The problem is this season's not getting any easier when compared to last. Now, the problem with handicapping NFL before we see any games is there's a huge variance always between one season to the next. Like the turnover, the injuries, there's just, and you couple that with a small sample size where they only play 16 games. So it's hard to just go off of last year. And yet that's all we have. But I just think because of last year, they are a little bit overvalued. But their schedule, like Marco touched on, is one of the most difficult in all of football, not just in the AFC. I mean, they play the number 1 pass defenses in all of football as far as the scheduling goes, the toughest defenses to throw against. You have a Josh Allen who, I get it, he's there to manage games. He's not a Mahomes. But with that said, in today's NFL, you got to throw the football more. We know with Buffalo, that's what they need to do. The defense gets it done. All the pressure's on the defense. But if your offense can't score a lot of points or your quarterback's not capable of making plays and winning games on his own, a la Mahomes, and you're not really picking up pieces to change that, I don't see how big of a step forward you could get. Fortunately for them, Patriots are arguably taking a big step back. So they may be able to surpass them and win this division. I mean, it's not like they're a dog to do it, but I don't think there's any betting value. I think there's a lot better positions to put your money in than the Buffalo Bills to go over or looking to bet them coming out of the gate because they've already got that label of the team to beat in the AFC East.
VR, you just touched on the Pats. I know that Belichick is still Belichick, and as you mentioned, he's outperformed the betting markets so much that I just finally last year said, okay, I'm going to only bet against them in very select spots. Outside of that, it's not fun to be betting against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I have very high hopes for Cam Newton. I'm curious to see your thoughts on how well you think he's going to fit into that system. As you guys know, I work for Bleacher Report. I get to meet tons of athletes. One of the guys I worked with, Chad Ochocinco, said that was the tightest ship he's ever worked for. It was the closest thing he thought would be the military. Bill Belichick does not mess around. I just am really trying to figure out how we're discrediting Belichick here. Potentially, if Cam Newton's fully healthy, we know he's athletic. Does he fit into that system? And are the Pats worth a play here?
Yeah, here's the thing with New England. They do everything right. I mean, this team, when a team goes into halftime, the NFL average is if you're down at half, Oh, real quickly, if you're betting the Miami Heat game, I don't know if the second half's over, but a lot of steam's coming in. Miami +7 and over, I think 110 in the second half. My phone's just going off like crazy. Unfortunately, I can't place them bets for these guys, so someone else is going to have to do it. But getting back to New England, that's the key, that they just continue to get it done, even from behind. Like I said, 4 out of 5 times, if you're down at halftime, you're going to lose that game. That hasn't been the case with New England. In fact, they've been able to come back and win 42% of the games they were down. So almost half the times they make the right adjustments at halftime. Who do you credit that to? You got to give it to the coaching staff. As much as it's the players got to go out there and execute, someone's got to draw up the plays. Someone has to decide what we're going to call, how we're going to change what's happened in that first 30 minutes. So as long as Belichick's there and he's pulling the strings, I'm not ready to give up on this team. The negative is that they got really lucky last year. I mean, they led the league in turnovers. I think they were like +21. The next best team was like 6 turnovers behind them, the New Orleans Saints. And more importantly, they had double the amount of fumbles, which I touched on last week, is a lot of luck. So again, they should regress, but I think we're expecting too much of a regression out of them. I know some sharp guys that actually are looking to go over on New England right before the season starts, hoping that the fade comes in as the public continues to get involved. I haven't gotten involved in it, but again, I learned my lesson about fading New England. I don't know anyone that's gotten rich doing it. And until we see that change, why even look for problems?
That makes sense to me. 9 wins over +120 right now at the Westgate. Marco, your thoughts on what VR had to say? Do you agree with us here on this Patriots team? Until further notice, this team is not fadeable?
Yeah, New England, I'm all in. I'm going to take New England to win the division. You've got, a 9-5 price tag on them because Buffalo's getting too much love, in my opinion. And I'm also going to be on New England to make the playoffs at -160. I generally won't lay that kind of price, but they're going to make the playoffs. This is Bill Belichick. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder because he sees all the pundits that are saying Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. That's given too much credit to Tom Brady. And, we're going to find out, was it Belichick or was it Brady? Was it the system or Brady? Here's something that you got to remember. That New England defense last year was superb. You look at the teams, they only allowed one team to score more than 28 points against them. They held 11 opponents last year to 14 or fewer points. And we got an added dimension this year with Cam Newton. The one thing about Brady, and, Brady wasn't going downfield and chucking the ball, throwing 40 and, 40-yard bombs. He was using the small passing game, short passing game, crossing routes. You got guys like Edelman that, yards after the catch. It was an extension of the running game. But when a play broke down, Tom Brady's never tucking the ball and running, okay? That is an added dimension now when you've got to prepare for New England. You got to worry about Cam Newton taking off with the football. It's 3rd and 6. You can't drop back in coverage and forget about the quarterback anymore with New England. I think New England still comes out of this division until you show me you're able to win and you're going to give me the underdog in the division. I'm there. I'm all in on New England.
So, Marco, as I mentioned, I'm pretty high on Cam this year. Obviously, given the fact that he stays healthy, I think he's got a big chip on his shoulder and a lot to prove. Your thoughts on maybe a little sprinkle on Cam Newton, 30-1. I think he might even be +2,700 right now at the Westgate to win MVP. I think those things can all kind of be correlated because I know that you have a bet on Bill Belichick to win Coach of the Year.
I do. And Kelly, we know that this is going to be the storyline all year with Tom Brady at Tampa. If he is successful, then it's going to all we're going to hear, it was Tom Brady, it was Tom Brady. But if the Patriots do what I think they're going to do, and everybody was so down on New England this year, and because this is going to be the storyline week after week with the Patriots, If the Patriots come out and make the playoffs, win the division, and end up having a season that they could have, because let's face it, they've got one team to beat in this division. It's Buffalo. Don't you think that Belichick is going to get some love in Coach of the Year voting? 18-1? Give me some of that. I'll take that. You give me 18-1 with a guy that I know is going to be in the headlines every single week. You're not going to be able to start SportsCenter any Sunday night without the storyline being Tom Brady at Tampa, New England without him. That's all I need.
You make a really good point that it is the Bills or the Pats here. Now, lots of guys in the comment section talking about the Jets. I was not high on the Jets last year. I'm not high on the Jets this year, mainly because a gentleman named Adam Gase makes it really hard for me to bet on this team. They're plus 1,000 to win the division. Season win total 6.5 over 110. Marco, I'll leave it with you. Quickly, tell me your thoughts on the Jets.
I'm not a fan of Adam Gase. And if you go back last year, and if you remember, I forget what week of the season it was, but there was that meme floating around Twitter with the tacos in Adam Gase, and he had that crazy-eyed look on him. I can't do it. And I know where the love is coming from. It's because the Jets went 6-2 the last 8 games of the season last year. And everybody remembers that Darnold, had mono to start the season. When he was out, the Jets were absolutely pathetic. Remember how bad the quarterback play was in those first few weeks of the season? And it seemed like they were on prime time every other week, because the schedule set in advance. And we had to watch that one Monday night fiasco. It was like the most painful game to watch with that offense. So now everybody's saying, okay, the 6-2 finish, you got a healthy, Darnold, they're going to jump on the bandwagon. But remember this, it was the end of the season. We saw that the year with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's the end of the season. They only beat one team with a winning record down the stretch. And then they faced, and that team was at the end of the season, the last week of the season, which you got to question motivation on teams if they got their playoff position locked up and such. Do it when the games mean something and against good teams. I can't do it. They'll probably be the third best team in the division, but they'll be a distant third. It's a 2-horse race here, and, another year they need. But, hey, they've got the best running back in football. Le'Veon Bell.
I was waiting for you to throw the Le'Veon Bell dig in there. All jokes aside, Marco is from Pittsburgh, so he has his own thoughts. And I, personally, still won't speak to Johnny Detroit after him not letting me trade Le'Veon Bell as my first-round draft pick a couple of years ago. VR, your thoughts on the New York Jets, if anywhere is worth a play, and what you think their overall season looks like?
Yeah, I'll be quick. We're only 20 minutes in. I think this is the third team I'm covering. Listen, here's the problem with the Jets. They're just not efficient enough. I mean, they did same mistakes they did in 2019, they did in 2018. So nothing's changing, even with the new coach, the new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. In fact, in 2019, only three other teams ran the ball more times than the Jets. So what did they do last year? I think only 1 or 2 teams ran the ball more times than the Jets, and they had no success doing it. In fact, they had the worst third down conversion rate. Why? Because you have a young quarterback and you're putting him in 3rd and 10 every single time. So you're not going to get a first down, and you're going to put your defense in bad positions. So until the play calling changes, until you start seeing them spread the field, passing a little more on 1st and 2nd down, instead of just run left, run right, now we'll pass on 3rd down. When you become that predictable in the NFL, you're not going to have success winning football games or covering football games. The spread becomes the great equalizer, so they may offer some value in spots, but this is a team you want to look to go under on season wins if you're betting them, and look to fade. There's nothing to really get me excited about the New York Jets this year. Except that last year they were so injured. Maybe they'll be luckier with the health. That's it.
All right. Well, Dolphins also plus 1,000 to win to the division. Vegas has them at 6 wins, minus 110 both ways. This is a Dolphins team that we know is going to start the season with Fitzpatrick. If he does what he did a few years ago with the Bucks and goes on a tear, we might not see Tua till week 6 to 8. But I have a feeling halfway through the season, Tua will be the quarterback of that football team. VR, your thoughts on the Dolphins and if there's anything worth a play here?
I love what the Dolphins are doing. And if you're a Miami fan, the future is looking bright. Forget what happened last year. They were so injured. I mean, every position except the tight end position had so many injuries. Easier schedule this time around. They faced some tough passing offenses, but year over year, I think it's going to be easier this time around. But here's what I like about Miami's future. They went out and they spent money. Nobody spent more money than the Miami Dolphins this year. I think in the history, they spent $237 million signing 12 players in free agency. That's planning for the future. You got yourself a quarterback. You got a new offensive coordinator in Chan Gailey. You got a coach and a defensive coordinator that had only been there for 1 year. This is a team on the come up. It's just a little bit too early. It takes time to build. If they could stay healthy, keep the pieces there, this is a team that can move forward, especially as New England regresses. They could progress, not this year, but Miami could be exciting in spots, especially when Tua gets involved. But again, a little too early.
Marco, I agree with VR. I do think that's an interesting little tidbit. I'm going to steal $237 million on 12 players. They definitely are looking towards the future. No disrespect to Tua. We're going to see how he plays out. Listen, I love mobile quarterbacks. I love exciting, awesome plays. Who doesn't? The problem is that far too often we see defensive coordinators. They get a little tape on these guys, and that's all she wrote. Patrick Mahomes has kind of basically been the exception so far. Maybe Lamar is going to be the exception this year. Maybe he won't. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But Marco, your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins and how you see their season playing out?
Oh, I agree with everything that VR said. And the one point that I will go with, remember, this is a Miami Dolphin team that started out 0-7 last year. Remember, they started putting up the props. Will the Dolphins go winless for the season? Because their play was so bad. They were getting blown out in the games. And give credit to Brian Flores for this first year as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He got them to finish at 5-4. And yeah, we did see some Fitz magic last year as he was lighting it up, but he had to light it up. Miami had one of the worst defenses in the league last year. Now, go into this year when you look at the season win totals and you have the number 6 there, a lot of people are going to be tempted to take the over 6 because of the way they finished the season. Here's the problem with that. We know Fitzpatrick's going to start the season. If they start the season out good, then it's going to be longer until we see Tua. But when we do get to Tua, there's going to be a regression. Even though he's going to have more practices and everything later when he comes in later in the season, it's going to be growing pains when they finally go to him. And like you said, Kelly, will it be week 6, 7, 8? Where will it be at? But that second half of the season is going to be tough if they go to Tua to get his feet wet if the season's over. I think this team's heading in the right direction. I think we're, definitely a year to 2 years too early with them. And for me, I don't see them getting to 7. So with a season win total of 6, I think the worst you can do taking the under is get a push here. So I'm on the under with Miami, under 6 wins.
I don't hate that. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're moving right along here, only 25 minutes in. We'll see you guys when we get back. Next up will be the AFC North.
This Saturday, it's the 146th running of the Kentucky Derby. Will Tiz the Law make it 2 in a row in the Triple Crown? Yes, it's the second leg of the Triple Crown, as Tiz the Law already won the Belmont earlier this summer. Join me on Saturday as I attack the Kentucky Derby. If you remember, in 2017, I advised my clients to invest $390 worth of wagers in the Kentucky Derby. Well, that $390 investment brought back over $9,000 for myself and my clients. If you want to join me on Saturday and bet the Kentucky Derby exactly how I am doing it, pick up my Kentucky Derby package over at WagerTalk.com. Not only will you get my exact wagers and betting strategies for the race, I'll also include my top sports pick for Saturday in either football, baseball, or basketball. Join me this Saturday for my Kentucky Derby package over at WagerTalk.com, just $39.
All right, guys, welcome back to Bet On It. So excited to be here. Thank you for all of you guys jumping in the chat. If we have some time at the end, I will get some of your betting questions answered. Don't worry, I see those. Let's talk about the AFC North. VR, I'm going to start with you. We're going to hit up the Ravens first because they are plus 250 to win the AFC, minus 180 to win the division, 11.5 wins over minus 120. Before we went to break, I mentioned, hey, is Lamar going to see some regression here? I don't know. I think Lamar is a great quarterback. I think this Ravens team's great. I think Harbaugh is awesome. This defense is pretty solid. 11.5 wins is really steep. And we'll talk about in a second who I actually like to win the division. But I want to know your thoughts on the Ravens first.
Yeah, it's going to sound a little contradictory, but the key is placing bets and hoping they're good bets, even if they contradict. And what I mean by that is, I think with Baltimore, if you're going to look to season wins, you're going to look for a regression because of how many games they won last year and how much everything has to go right to win 12 games. With that said, they're the second best team in the AFC, meaning they would be favored over everyone on a neutral field that isn't the Kansas City Chiefs. But I would still look to bet them under on season wins because I think they're overvalued. The problem is they got a very easy schedule coming up this year. And they were the second most injured defense last year. So their offense had to do everything, which they were able to do. Now you have an offensive coordinator with a second year under his wing. I think this team's going to be just as dangerous. If the defense really steps up, they're a possible Super Bowl representative from the AFC. Again, with Harbaugh, they're a team that's probably going to cover a lot of games. He doesn't mind stepping on the pedal and blowing teams away at sometimes. But again, I don't think there's value in that season win total. And Baltimore's as loaded as they come. They did good in those close games last year, 5-1 in one-score games. But it wasn't by luck. I mean, you know what I mean? This team earned their wins. They did good with turnovers, but still, they are loaded. That's how I feel about Baltimore. I don't think they win 14 games again. But unless Pittsburgh really does come out of the gate and shock, I think they're the team that could give them some fits in the North. But Baltimore, if they stay healthy, could be a problem.
All right, Marco, the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson is, as I mentioned, a great quarterback. But once you get some tape on some of these guys, we start to see some regression. Now, I accused him when I was doing a video with Mr. Ralph Michaels, who we'll have back on next week for some TNA. I accused him of having regression in that Titans game. And Ralph reminded me that Lamar still had a pretty good game. The Titans just had a better game. Your thoughts on this Ravens team? Do we see them kind of digress? And then I'll let you get into the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, yes, I think Baltimore's going to take a step back. I still think they're the team that wins the division. They're clear-cut favorite for a reason. But as you said, Lamar Jackson, can he duplicate last year's performance? Also, can Baltimore as a team duplicate last year's turnover ratio? They were number 6 in turnover differential last year. That was a big help. One thing I will say with Baltimore coming out of the gate, if there's any one team that should hit the ground running, and no pun intended, based on what they did all of last year running the football, is going to be Jim Harbaugh, or John Harbaugh, excuse me. The situation that I said numerous times last week is because of what we had with no mini camps. Then we've got no preseason. So many teams are going to struggle early. New coaching staffs, new schemes. That's not going to be the case with Baltimore. Baltimore is going to hit the ground on all 8 cylinders rolling, and they'll probably get some wins early. And as VR said, the schedule's favorable early on for them. But when you get later in the season, they've got a 6-week stretch that's going to determine whether or not they hit this season win total of 11.5. And that is from November 8th to December 14th. They're going to play 3 of 4 on the road. And those road games are at Indianapolis, at New England, at Pittsburgh. And then the one game at home sandwiched in between that. How about a playoff revenge game against those Tennessee Titans? And then when you finish those 2 up, what do you got after that? You've got Dallas and Cleveland, which Cleveland and Baltimore is always a rivalry as well. That is a horrific 6-week stretch for them to overcome. And I think you look at them, if they just go 3-3 during that 6-game stretch, well, you only got to find 2 more losses on the season not to cash the over. I think they have a slight regression in the season win totals. I'll take them under the 11.5.
All right, Marco, I mentioned I thought there was another team that was going to win that division, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, plus 300 to win the AFC North. Their season win total is 9.5. The under's juiced just a little bit, minus 120. Listen, I think that Big Ben is probably going to have, this is probably going to be close to his last year, depending on how things play out. If he stays healthy, this team, I think, will be a force to reckon with. I think that they have the running game going. They have good weapons. And for once in a long time, Mike Tomlin has control of this locker room. I think that that's something that doesn't really get talked about that often, but we were talking about the Jets and Adam Gase. There's a coach that doesn't have control of their locker room, and that's why they have issues within their team. Your thoughts on the Steelers? I'm kind of curious to see if you agree with me, if maybe they're even worth a little sprinkle at 25-1 to win the Super Bowl.
There's definitely value with the Pittsburgh Steelers. In full disclosure, I'm a big Steeler fan, but I don't bet with my heart. I bet with my head when I talk about the Steelers. And you guys know from doing shows with me over the years, and VR, you've done shows with me for over 10 years. I bet against the Steelers as much as I bet with them. I know the team. This is a team, and Kelly, you hit the nail on the head about Mike Tomlin has the locker room. He had the locker room last year. Unfortunately, he lost his leader in Big Ben. The backup quarterback situation last year was absolutely horrendous, okay? Mason Rudolph, who the Steelers are very high on, after last year, I'm not, but they're still high on him, and I'll get to that in a moment. And then you had Duck Hodges. I mean, the city was going quack, quack the 3 games that he came in last year. This is a team that was carried by a defense last year, and as good as that defense played, the offense gave them zero help. They were on the field for more plays every single game because the offense couldn't stay on the field. Now you've got a healthy Ben, and all the reports from all of the beat writers and people I respect in Pittsburgh covering the Steelers training camp is Big Ben has shown no signs of problems from the elbow injury. This is a thing that if he stays healthy with the way that defense played last year, and don't forget, not only did the Steelers have bad quarterback backup play, but James Conner was in and out of the lineup banged up last year, so they didn't have a solid running game to go as well. So you've got no production out of the quarterback position, and you struggled with the running game, and yet you were 1 game away from the playoffs last year. This was an 8-8 team. Yes, I'm high on the Steelers, and they can make that run. It's a 2-horse race here. I'm looking at the Steelers, and yeah, they're going to be juicy. Am I going to take them to win the division? I don't think there's enough of a number there for me to do it, but I do think when we get to the futures to come out of the AFC and represent the Steelers, I like the value that, okay, if they get in there against, Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, we always say, defense wins championships. And last year, man, this defense was tremendous. And think how much better that defense will be if the offense stays on the field. Now, I will say one last thing on the Steelers, and it drove me nuts. They didn't make the one move I wanted them to make. And that's why I said they're really high on Mason Rudolph. I wanted them to go out and pick off one of these veteran quarterbacks that were rolling around out there in the offseason. And the one that I thought would have been the perfect fit for the Steelers, because he's much like Ben. He sits in the pocket. He's not mobile. He's got an arm. And I know he's got a knock that he never won a playoff game, but he also is one of the few quarterbacks in the history of the NFL that took a team to the playoffs in his first 4 seasons. And that was Andy Dalton that was out there that they could have got basically for a ham sandwich that Dallas picked up. What an insurance policy that would have been for the Steelers, but they didn't pull the trigger.
Marco, I was laughing as our producer was putting up the schedule. I just remembered that the Broncos play the Steelers in Pittsburgh in early September. You and I are going to have a side bet there. VR, we joke with Marco. We do know that he does bet against his team from time to time. I am going to make him take the Steelers in that game just for fun, though. Was Marco being too much of a homer there, or do you agree with him on his thoughts on Pittsburgh?
No, I agree 100%. Pittsburgh's one of those teams where I do think there's some value on futures. I haven't bet my AFC team for my Super Bowl future like I did with Dallas, but Pittsburgh's one of the finalists. I'm down to like 2 teams. Anyway, make a long story short, I think Pittsburgh, because of last year, can surprise. Last year was a success at 8-8. Here's what I mean. They turned the ball over 30 times, and yet we're positive 8 in turnover differential because of that defense. Now, that's going to regress a little bit. You're not going to get 38 turnovers again. And that helped them because that defense was put in some bad positions. In fact, the 27th worst as far as starting field position where their defense was. And yet they did a remarkable job, as Marco touched on, getting this team to 8-8. The problem with Pittsburgh is they're too predictable, and they're going to have to change that. If they can do that, I think they move forward. Here it is. You saw 2 running backs last year, Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell. When Samuels was on the field, they passed the ball 75% of the time. So defense knew if they see Samuels 3 out of 4 times, let's drop back, they're passing. If Snell was on the field 78% of the time, so now 4 out of 5 times, if they see Snell, they're going to run the ball. Now let's bring all the defense up. When you do that and you become that predictable and still go 8-8, it says a lot, especially when you do it with your leading receiver being a 3rd-round rookie, Deontay Johnson from Toledo, your 4th-round rusher from Kentucky, Snell, 8 carries short of the leading rusher. So, I mean, they did it with almost nothing. I like Pittsburgh. They should be on the rise. Again, you got to get a little bit lucky in the NFL with health, but the scheduling sets up so nicely. It's such an easy coast offense and defense. This is a definitely team where there's some value on the futures and could possibly upset Baltimore.
All right, I'm glad we're all in agreement here, VR. I'm going to stick with you. The Cleveland Browns, man, was last year absolutely money for me. I hammered their season win total under. I said, man, this team is getting so much love. I don't get it. And then Freddie Kitchens ran a stupid draw play on 4th and 3, the 1 or 2 times I bet him. And I said, good God, what am I doing here? Why would I ever put a wager on this team? Now, I'm expecting this team to be a little bit better. We spoke a lot about cohesion, or at least Marco did. When you have no minicamp, when you have no preseason, cohesion is going to be really important this year. So this team does have that as far as a team aspect goes, but another new head coach for Baker Mayfield is always interesting here. VR, your thoughts on the Browns? They're currently plus 550 to win the division, and their season win total is 8.5.
They really benefit from the schedule. I mean, they have a really easy schedule this year. The negative is they were one of the healthiest teams in all of the NFL last season, especially on offense. And it's hard to stay that lucky in pro football. So that's the negative, even though their schedule is easy. What you touched on sticks out the most to me is they were the sexy team coming into the season last year, way overvalued. Now, though, you're seeing the rebooting. You have a brand new head coach, a brand new offensive coordinator, a brand new defensive coordinator. And if I'm not mistaken, none of these guys had that position before with any other team. So you're asking them to do a lot as far as setting up this team for success in their very first year. That's why I could not go over on this team. It would be under or leave it alone. They're just not anything to get excited about just yet. They had their chance last year, and we didn't see that progression. And again, it's an upgrade from being what? They didn't win a single game a couple seasons ago. So, I mean, they did win 6 games and then 7 games. But, you know, are they a 500 team? Probably not. I would go under or leave it alone.
Marco, the Cleveland Browns. I got to agree with everything VR said. I don't know if I'm brave enough to go under their season win total here. I think this is an iffy type of thing. I'm looking at their schedule. I think Cleveland could win 9 games if they play up to their level. I do agree with VR. I think, if anything, I lean towards the under. Your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns to either win the division or their season win total?
This is a spot for the Browns. Last year was a year premature. They're going to improve this year. Are they going to improve enough to get over that hump of 8.5? I'm not sure, and it's going to come down to the final 6 games of the season. 2 things I'll say about it. One, you talked about continuity. 3 different head coaches in 3 years for Baker Mayfield. That is not what you want to do for a young quarterback, and especially in a year where you didn't get the mini camps in preseason to have the new system and get used to it. What they need to do, and again, this went to the coaching staff last year with the play calling. They called the running plays when they shouldn't have, and they didn't run the football enough when they should have called the running plays. You have Nick Chubb in the backfield. Why do you not utilize him and take the pressure off of Baker Mayfield? You'll make Baker Mayfield a better quarterback if the running game's going. They also went out and got Kareem Hunt. You've got 2 good running backs where you can move the chains. But if you look at the last 6 games of the season for the Browns, they're going to play 4 road games during those 6 games. But the problem with that, sandwiched in between those 4 road games at the end of the season, they have to play the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, the 2 toughest teams in the division. And that's going to make or break their season as far as the season win total goes. And because the Browns are improved and because Pittsburgh is improved, that's why I'm saying Baltimore probably still deserves to be the favorite for the division, but it's going to take away some of those wins that they had last year because both the Steelers and Cleveland are improved. This is going to be a good old-fashioned AFC North where it could be a 3-horse race, but I just think Cleveland is maybe 1 year away from being a serious contender.
Marco, you and I were chatting a little bit before the show started, and I told you I was doing a AFC North preview for Bleacher Report. I had some guy just talking trash in the mentions, and he said, Kelly, the Cincinnati Bengals are going to have a better season win record than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I said, do you want to put your money where your mouth is? And he said, yeah. And I go, even money. We're just going to bet a nickel straight up. I am so perplexed. Now, do I think Cincinnati will do better? Do I think Joe Burrow is a capable quarterback? Yes, but we know it takes time to fit in these systems. I want to know your thoughts on the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'll be really disappointed if somehow your Steelers win 6 games and the Cincinnati Bengals win 6 games. I mean, I'll actually be shocked if this happens and I lose this bet.
Well, Kelly, my first question to you, because as clueless as this guy is to accept this bet, does he understand the terminology, what a nickel is? Does he realize that is $500? Okay.
He did, because I wrote $500 and I did the handshake emoji. I go that the Steelers will have more wins than the Bengals. Like, oh, I laid it out. Trust me, I did. And I was like, is this guy a Cincinnati homer? I just was so shocked. And like I said, Cincinnati plus 2,000 to win the division, over 5.5 wins minus 550. I mean, I feel like I have a 4-game buffer here. Feeling pretty good out about it. But do you agree with him that maybe Cincinnati is going to be a little bit better than last year? I know last year I played them week 1 plus 9.5 at Seattle. This is a team with Andy Dalton that typically started to start off pretty well, at least against the spread, and then really sputtered out in the middle of the season. Or are we going to see something different here with Joe Burrow?
Well, what happened with Cincinnati in several of the past few seasons is, yes, they had an offense that was explosive. When they're healthy, this is a team that could move the football. But they couldn't keep the wide receivers healthy. You had, this was a team. How many times was Tyler Eifert hurt? He was on the injured list every single week, it seemed like. A.J. Green, whether it was a toe, a hamstring, whatever, he was on it. Boyd was on it. They need to be healthy to start with. But Joe Burrow coming in, yes, I love Joe Burrow, and I think he's going to have a great career in the NFL. But, Kelly, I don't care who you are. That first season, when you move from the college ranks to the NFL, the speed of the game is so much different. And just stop all you SEC lovers saying, well, the SEC is the enemy. Okay. No, there's a couple teams on that upper echelon, but you've got a lot of garbage teams at the bottom as well, especially last year. Last year in the SEC was the biggest disparity between the haves and the have-nots in quite some time. That SEC wasn't as deep as it normally is. Yes, there were several good teams, but there were some bad teams. Joe Burrow's going to have growing pains. And he didn't get to have the mini camp. He didn't get to have preseason. And, he's got a new system to learn. I don't think they get there. They're going to surprise in some games like we saw last year with Arizona and Kyler Murray. And because of the success that Kyler Murray had last year, I think there's unwarranted optimism that Joe Burrow, because, you would have to say to be NFL ready, Joe Burrow is way ahead of what the expectations were for Kyler Murray last year. And I think that's fogging some of the people's judgments in the Bengals. They don't get to the season win total, but I did not pull the trigger and make a bet.
All right, VR, did you make a bet on the Cincinnati Bengals? Do you think Joe Burrow is going to have a great rookie year? Maybe a little sprinkle on him to win Rookie of the Year?
No, listen, I think because like Marco touched on, he just didn't have the opportunity to really have a first season, with a preseason, with all the mini camps. So, I mean, he's starting from behind, and he's got a coach in Zach Taylor who doesn't have all that much experience. I mean, I remember fading him at Nebraska not a decade ago. So it's not like, this team's been building for years. But, Joe Burrow is going to be a huge upgrade in time. The negative for the Bengals is the season starts off very difficult for them. I mean, they play in the first 10 games, they have road games at Philadelphia, at Baltimore, at Pittsburgh, and they got Tennessee at home, Indianapolis at home. Those are tough ball games in your first 10 for a rookie quarterback. So it's not easy. The flip side is you can't be any worse in close games. You got to get lucky sometimes. They were 0-8 in games decided by, one score or less. They were 0-3 in games decided by a field goal or less. There's a lot of randomness when you lose games like that. So a 2-win season last year could have easily been 3 or 4. Now, if it was 3 or 4, you don't need all that much to get the 6. If it was a real 2, now you need 3x to get the 6. And asking for a 3x progression is too much from Cincinnati when there's just not enough done in the offseason to see that happening. So I think it's priced where it should be. I don't see any value in betting the over or the under. I think you may get some value in betting this team because they may be getting a ton of points if they come out of the gate with some problems because of how difficult that early scheduling is. So if you see them getting double digits, especially how bad they did in close games last year, they may be able to pull out some of those backdoor covers. So I wouldn't look to fade them week by week, but I wouldn't get involved in futures with them either.
All right, guys. Appreciate everyone tuning in, jumping in the chat. Everybody's got stuff to say. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to check out the AFC South.
If you like betting on horses, be sure to check out WagerTalk.com's own Sig, who zeroes on one racetrack at a time, offering his handicapping skills. Visit his homepage daily for his top selection in each race free. If you want all his selections for that track, you can get his full racing report for just $9.
Football is here, and the Gold Sheet, the nation's oldest sports betting newsletter, is back for its 63rd year, bigger and better than ever. Gold Sheet has a new, improved web-based, mobile-friendly format that includes all of the winning information you rely on with the easiest access ever. While the format is new, all of the features you are accustomed to are still there. That's right, analysis on every pro and college game, key release selections, updated power ratings on every team, point spread logs for all NFL and college teams, and all college football games through May 2021 will be included. To celebrate joining the WagerTalk family, we are offering our subscribers our best deal ever. Sign up for a season of any Gold Sheet product and get $200 in WagerBucks as a bonus. WagerBucks can be used to purchase handicapping information from any of our 40-plus experts on WagerTalk or sportsmemo.com. Head to goldsheet.com/WagerTalk for any subscription and bonus details. All right, guys, I just wanted to give myself a little shameless plug here. Before we start talking about the AFC South, lots of talk about these overlays here in Las Vegas. Circa still at a $2 million overlay between the two contests. Westgate, $100,000 overlays for each quarter. This is going to be one of those unprecedented years. You guys still have about 11 days, not quite. Let's see if I can do math in my head. 10 days to come sign up in Vegas for one of these contests. Make sure you guys check out our proxy service, kellyinvegas.com. I know I've taken care of both of these gentlemen in the past. We always excel to be the best in the business. So again, if you guys are looking for a proxy for one of the Vegas-based contests, kellyinvegas.com. Marco, I'm going to kick it to you first. The AFC South, Philip Rivers. Oh my God. I have said this for years. This man is the bane of my existence. And I don't mean to bash the nice guy. I know he just wants to have lots of kids and be really nice. But damn it, every time I bet on him or against him, I lose money. It never fails. That being said, he now has a really stout O-line, which was made for Andrew Luck. We saw Jacoby Brissett have some success in the quarterback position there. He will be the backup this year. The Colts currently plus 110 to win the AFC South, over 9.5 wins, plus 105 over at the Superbook at the Westgate. Marco, help me here. I don't even know how to feel about this Colts team. I don't ever want to have a bias, but I'm telling you, I cannot name another player that has cost me more money than Philip Rivers.
Well, Kelly, we all know about the meltdown last year with his throwing velocity. In baseball, we would use the term a pitcher gets a tired arm, later in the season. He had no velocity on his throws, and his throws were getting picked off left and right. There were some games that were just absolutely nightmares with the interceptions. But there's just a little bit too much love, I think, with the Indianapolis Colts. When I first saw, and you said the totals at 9.5, this actually opened at 9 and was bet to 9.5. When I first saw the total, the season win total, I looked twice and I said, is this the season win total, or is it the number of children he has? And when it went to 9.5, do we have another one on the way? What's the deal? But you hit the nail on the head with the offensive line. They built this offensive line to protect Andrew Luck. They spent money, and they got 7 wins out of Jacoby Brissett last year. Nothing against Jacoby Brissett, but he is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. He had his moments, but yet he was over his head in too many instances. Phillip Rivers this year is not going to have to throw the football as many times as he did last year. So we shouldn't get that tired arm syndrome that we saw from him last year. Also, he's got a good running game. This offensive line is going to protect him. He's not going to be under, duress every play. And remember last year in LA, I almost said San Diego, you had the distraction of Melvin Gordon. It was Le'Veon Bell 2.0. He held out at the beginning of the season, come into camp, never had the season that he had. And, when we get to the Chargers later in the show, I'll say, the positives there. But he's going into a team that's well coached, has a good defense, and has a great offensive line. He didn't have any of that.
Don't worry, Marco.
The last two.
The Broncos have to now worry about the Melvin Gordon drama. I'm already a little nervous there because I'm a big Philip Lindsay fan. But no, you're absolutely right. That's something to consider. And anytime you're looking at a team, where are their distractions? I know we already spoke about the Jets and Adam Gase, but what are we hearing there? Lots of chatter. People are not happy. And that's why certain coaches are quick to make cuts from some of these guys. That's why we saw Earl Thomas exit the Ravens very quickly, because a lot of these coaches aren't going to put up with it. Some do. And I don't think Frank Wright's one of those guys. And I also would like to think that Phillip Rivers is going to do well at the Colts. I feel like he fits well in that system, but very good points by you. VR, your thoughts, 9.5. This is a ton of wins. When's the last time Phillip Rivers won 10 games?
Yeah, at 9, I would look to go over. I think this team's pretty good. And here's what I mean. Frank Reich and offensive coordinator Nick Sirianni is now with what's it called, Rivers. So that's going to help. And it's a huge upgrade, like Marco touched on, from what happened last year. Let's not forget, going into last season, the Colts were all the hype. They were one of the top 5 teams to win the Super Bowl. In fact, their win total was around 9.5, getting steamed over to 10. They were 10-1 to win the Super Bowl. And then what happens? Because remember, Andrew Luck coming off that 2018 season where his first year with Reich, and he had his best quarterback rating, he had his best passer rating, he had his best completion percentage. He had such a great year. Everyone said this may be the season. He gets hurt. They go from 10-1 to 80-1, and their win total goes from 10 to 7.5, all within a matter of 24 hours. So this team was turned upside down and still managed to win 7 games with what they had. Again, I think the upgrade in Rivers can only help. He's your short-term solution, obviously, not your long-term solution. And I think that's what they needed right now, because remember, they were situated to win now with Andrew Luck. They just lost Andrew Luck last year. So I think they're not giving up on this core just yet. The season's manageable as far as when you look at the schedule. And who knows, maybe injury-wise, they're as lucky as they were last year, except at the quarterback position, because everywhere else, quarterback and wide receivers where they had nothing, all the injuries. But if they could stay healthy, I'd go over. Again, I think the Colts should be pretty good this year.
All right, one of the surprise teams of last year was the Tennessee Titans and Ryan Tannehill to finish up the season after Mariota was out. Titans plus 180 to win the division. 8.5 wins over minus 130. Now, I actually almost feel like there's a 3-dog race, and we'll get to the Texans here a little bit later on. I think the Titans see some regression. What are your thoughts on Tennessee and either their shot to win the division, season win total over, or just in general?
I'm high on Tennessee. I really am. I like, number one, what they did last year. I mean, they were not supposed to be able to do what they did when they switched quarterbacks. I mean, you went from the guy you wanted, where you kind of tank for, to Ryan Tannehill, who averaged like a couple yards per completion in his career. And look what they did. They became the most efficient offense pretty much in all of football in the second half of the season with that. That was huge. The problem is they were really healthy. To be as healthy as they were, you got to be very lucky. They were healthy on the offensive side of the ball. They were healthy on the defensive side of the ball. In fact, they were the third healthiest unit overall. And when you do that, you're going to win some football games, because the one thing the NFL isn't is deep. We see that year after year. Even these top-tier teams, the top offenses and defenses, they're not very deep. And because of that, there's problems if someone goes down. So again, if they could stay healthy, I think it's an over. But they were real lucky staying that healthy last year. And they got a new defensive coordinator this year. Let's see how that shapes up. But I think this team's legit just because of what they were able to do with nothing pretty much last year.
Marco, your thoughts? Do you think that the Tennessee Titans see some regression here? I thought, we just joked about Adam Gase. I hate to keep going back to the poor Jets people in our mentions here, but I even said last year, maybe Adam Gase was Ryan Tannehill's problem. Now under Coach Vrabel, he did have some moments of greatness. He beat the Chiefs for me. That was absolutely awesome. He beat the Ravens for me. There was several key times where the Titans were underdogs. The problem is I don't think that's going to be the case here.
Kelly, this was a spot with Tannehill. How many times have you heard me say that a good running game is going to make an average quarterback good and a good quarterback great? Ryan Tannehill had his best season ever last season. And it's simply two words: Derrick Henry. When you have an all-world running back like he had last year with Derrick Henry, he never had that in Miami. They never had a running game. And that was the problem. Now, will there be a regression? Yeah, there's going to be a regression, because Vegas is telling you that. This is a team that last year won 9 games, but they put the total out at 8.5, and Tannehill didn't play the entire season. Marcus Mariota started the season until he finally got yanked. So Vegas is expecting a regression here. And one thing I'm going to note, both guys, Tannehill and Derrick Henry, scored big offseason contracts. Sometimes you're not quite as hungry after you get the payday. And that's a problem too. And because we see Indianapolis is going to be improved this year, that's going to take, this is a division where I think the 3 teams, the 2 we already talked about, and the Texans can end up knocking each other off when they, splitting series wins for the season when they play their 2-game home and homes, that you're going to have the winner come out of this division at 9-7, 10-6 at best. So that's going to make it tough for all these teams. Can't hit their over. And so for me, I think it's priced around where it should be, but I'm not taking them season win total or not. But I think there'll be spots that Tennessee will be overpriced because of last year's, not only the run at the end of the season with Tannehill, but the fact that they went to the AFC Championship game.
All right, Marco, I mentioned I thought there was maybe a chance for a third team here in the Texans. They are plus 350 to win the division. Texans over 7.5 wins plus 110. The reason why I'm not taking a shot here is because I've already mentioned who's the bane of my existence in the quarterback position. Who's the bane of my existence in the coaching position? That's right. It is Bill O'Brien. When I bet against him, somehow he pulls something out. And guess what? I lose my game. If I bet against this guy, most notably last year, the 28-point lead to the Chiefs. And if I bet against this, or if I bet on this guy, those type of things happen to me. Your thoughts on the Texans? Do you think that this division is kind of a 3-dog race here? And do you like their season win total or think they have a shot to win the division?
I think it's a 2.5 team race. For the Texans, they got to have a lot of things go their way. First of all, they had the most puzzling offseason with draft choices that they took and the offseason moves. And most, the one that everybody scratched their head on is they gave DeAndre Hopkins away for basically nothing. They're taking a retread running back that, Arizona was happy to give away. And Deshaun Watson, the offensive line didn't protect him. They need to give him more protection so he's not running around for his life all the time. They need to establish the running game. Now, if they get any production out of the running game, that'll help Deshaun Watson. But the other thing they need, and again, I keep saying all these things that have to go right. Can J.J. Watt stay healthy for a season?
That's
Can they
exactly
get somebody in
what I was getting ready to ask. This is the first time to start the season that all of their defensive members are healthy. The question is, how long will that be? And is that too big of a question mark to make a wager on this Texans season win total?
Well, again, you should start the season healthy. If you're not healthy at the beginning of the season, you got real problems.
It's happened before. We've seen J.J. Watt out week 1 so many times. I mean, this man is an absolute beast, but he can't seem to stay healthy.
He's like, I'm sure, VR being the boxing guy, he was the equivalent of a boxer with a glass chin. He gets knocked out early all the time. But Kelly, my concerns, and this is what was the problem with the Texans too often. They had to get in shootouts last year because that defense was so bad, and mainly the secondary. And the secondary was really poor because they weren't getting any pass rush. They need a healthy J.J. Watt to put pressure on the quarterback. And until they show me that they fixed that problem, I can't go all in on the Texans. Will they have their moments? Yes. And will I think that they can split with Tennessee and Indianapolis? Yes. And that's, again, why I think that this is a division that you're looking at 9-7, 10-6 to win it. There's 3 teams in it, and then there's one that isn't.
We'll get to that team here in 1 second, but I did just get a text. We have some breaking news. Leonard Fournette just signed with the Bucs. Do we want to go back to last week and change anything that we said about the Bucs here? All jokes aside, VR, your thoughts here on this Texans team. Bill O'Brien, we know Deshaun Watson's a stud, but he can't do it himself. They gave away his best weapon, as Marco mentioned, for literally peanuts. This is a tough one to swallow here because I do know that this team has talent, but they tend to get out-coached.
Yeah, and they picked up that running back contract that's going to make it worse for them in the future. So I don't know what decisions this team's making, but it's not good ones. Again, another squad where there's just not all that much to get excited about. And you have a brand new offensive and defensive coordinator now. And this is one of those unprecedented years. We're seeing it in Major League Baseball. We're seeing it in the NBA. And with the NBA, remember, they had played a little bit. Same thing with NHL. But now with the NFL not having all that preparation and a lot of new coordinators, especially on both sides of the ball, I could see why Vegas lowered their season win totals. Let's not forget, this team went from 11 wins in 2018, 10 wins in 2019, and now they're projected to not even be an 8-8 team. That's a lot of regression pretty quickly. So I don't know if it's too much too soon. They played a lot of close games last year. In fact, the 11 of their games were one-score games, and they went 8-3 in that. They went 5-1 in games that were decided by 3 points or less. You just can't repeat that. So again, not a lot to get excited with the Houston Texans team. I wouldn't look to bet them under, though, because they lowered that total a little bit too much for me to see value in it.
So basically the biggest dog and a bigger dog than Cincinnati to win their division, the Jacksonville Jaguars, plus 2,500, 4.5 wins, juice to the over -120 at the Westgate. VR, last year, Gardner Minshew was fun to watch for about a game and a half. He had the mustache, he had the short shorts. He brought a little bit of life to this Jaguars team. What's going on with this team? We know they cut Leonard Fournette. I just mentioned that he is signed with the Bucs. Maybe Doug Marrone's setting a precedent saying, look, I'm not putting up with any BS here in Jacksonville. Or maybe he just decided that this was not the right fit for Fournette. Your thoughts on the 4.5 and the biggest dog to win their division this year?
Yeah, I don't know what this team's doing. I mean, you're getting early draft picks and within a year or two, they're gone, doing nothing for you but costing you money and draft picks. No one was in a tougher situation last year than Gardner Minshew. Again, remember what happened with Jacksonville. They went out and got Nick Foles, who had that year with Philadelphia, and they overpaid for him. They wanted him so bad. So they had a new pretty much coordinator at the time. It was like, we're all in on Foles. And what happened? Gets injured right away. And Gardner Minshew thrown into the mix, pretty much not prepared for it. He wasn't being groomed to take over the starting job, especially in his first season. So the fact what they were able to do, I thought was pretty impressive to get the 6 wins when the year prior they only had 5. Now it's 4.5. So a regression's even expected to continue. And I really can't agree with that. You know, I mean, this is a team where there's just not all that much to get excited about. The only positive is maybe they won't be as injured as last year. The flip side of that coin is even if these players are healthy, how good are they? So yeah, Jaguars, I think they're priced right. Again, you know, when it comes with the season win totals, one side's going to win, one side's going to lose, but that still doesn't mean one side was a good bet. And I just think in this case, they priced it where it should be. It's a team regressing, and they should regress right around there, win 4 or 5 games. So I don't think there's value either way.
Some funny comments from our listeners in the chat. Jacksonville's tanking for Lawrence. Jags waiting to move to London. Then they're going to spend money. Who knows what this Jags team is doing? But we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the AFC West and the team you guys have been bugging me about since last week, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Get $25 in wager bucks added to your account after your first purchase at WagerTalk.com and SportsMemo.com. This is just our way of saying thank you for joining the WagerTalk and Sports Memo family.
September 2020 is a historic month. We have baseball, soccer, hockey, horse racing, basketball, and now football. For the first time ever, every major sport is being played at once. This week only, we're giving you 30 days of all access with your favorite WagerTalk or Sports Memo handicapper for just $199. The normal price there, $349. So what do you get with the WagerTalk 30-day all access for less than $7 a day? You get every play released from your favorite capper. No coupon needed, just $199 each. And this offer is valid through midnight Saturday. Last but not least, the AFC West. Of course, we have to start with the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, Super Bowl winners. They are 2-1 to win the AFC, minus 400 to win the division. And if you like them over 11.5 wins, you got to pay a little bit of juice, minus 120 over at the Superbook. Marco, I'm going to let you start off with the AFC West, the Kansas City Chiefs here, and your thoughts. Is this your year? Patrick Mahomes got a huge paycheck. Do we see some regression for the best quarterback in football?
Well, I actually thought that you were going to go to Gianni to start this one because I think Kansas City, aren't they as fake as a $3 bill? But no, this is the biggest.
You're so terrible.
I think I even had a Chiefs hat that day on, if I'm not mistaken.
Listen, VR, we love VR. And usually he is very spot on with his analysis. I will say this, the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, he was a little off on.
All kidding aside, and if you're just watching the show for the first time, we bust each other's stones all the time. But this is the biggest gap in any of the divisions. There's a 3.5 win difference from the first place team to the second place team here. It's not going to happen, okay? They're not going to close the gap. It's the Kansas City Chiefs to win the division. They're probably going to have home field advantage, which this year, home field advantage is not going to, going to Arrowhead is one of the toughest places to go. And before the Seattle fans get all upset, that is the loudest outdoor stadium in pro football. But when you don't have fans in it, it's going to be a different story. But yes, it's Kansas City and then everybody else. Mahomes got the big contract. The one thing that I'll say about the Chiefs that went really unnoticed, and I gave VR some crap about the phony is a $3 bill. I bashed the Chiefs defense last year on a regular basis at the beginning because I thought they were doing it with mirage, they weren't facing good quarterbacks. But really over the second half of the season, they played exceptionally well. And the key was they got a couple key players back and they started to gel together. If you put that offense that we saw last year with Mahomes in the way the defense played the second half of the season, this is a team that's very good and is going to be very good for a long time. You can't stop this offense. And the thing about as good as the defense played last year, Kelly, remember, how quick did the Chiefs score on a lot of their drives last year? We talk about, sending a defense when you have an offense that's no good and can't stay on the field, that it hurts the defense. They got to play more downs. Well, the same can be said when you have an offense that scores too quick and it puts the defense back out on the field right away. And yet the Chiefs improved dramatically on the defensive end of the football. This is a team, they're the favorite to win the division. They're the favorite to win the Super Bowl or the AFC and Super Bowl, and it's deservedly so.
All right, VR. Marco, not saying the Chiefs are faker than a $3 bill. I can't help it. It's funny because I was on the same thing, and I get trolled all the time by Chiefs fans on Twitter, and I get it. I grew up in Kansas, and I'm not a Chiefs fan, and I'm hated for it because guess what, guys? They're in Missouri. Fun fact. See, we're always educating everybody on Bet On It. VR, your thoughts on this year's Kansas City Chiefs team? I think Marco made a really good point. When the Chiefs 2 years ago lost to the Patriots in that overtime playoff game, I said, fire your defensive coordinator. Sure enough, they did. And he absolutely nailed it. This defense really started to improve in the second half of the season. Do you think that they keep it up? I mean, this defense is really talented. But as Marco mentioned, being on the field 2/3 of the game is really tough, and to battle through injuries, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and let's not forget, I think Mahomes didn't even play every game last year, so he wasn't 100% healthy, and they were still so dominant. Here's the truth with the Chiefs, why I was late to the party. It's the same thing I keep saying about the NFL. It's a small sample size sport where a season 16 games. So a lot of the wins come from randomness. That's why the best team doesn't win the Super Bowl every year. They don't play 7-game series over and over in the playoffs for the cream to rise to the top. So random events are going to cause victories and defeats. But where I turned the corner is when I started seeing that what the Chiefs are doing differently is they're just following the analytics. And what the analytics show is that the NFL has changed. And here's what I mean real quickly. For my whole life growing up betting football, I was given all kind of cliches, such as the run sets up the pass and nonsense like that. That's no longer the case. In fact, analytics, advanced analytics show us nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the teams that ended up running successfully in those 70s and 80s and early 90s, where we didn't have advanced analytics, they did so because they had success throwing the football. And the Chiefs ended up proving that by doing what they have done over the last 2 years. And here's what they've done. They passed the ball early. In fact, they pass the ball 65% of the time on first down in the first half of football games. So they jump right on teams. They give you no chance to breathe. They force your defense to react to them, meaning they're going to decide what personnel you're going to use because we're coming out firing. And they continue to do that over and over. The NFL average on throw-in on first down isn't even 50%. Not even half the times do teams do it. This team did it almost 70% of the time. So they realized that's how we're going to set up our run. That's how we get successful. You build leads, and then it's easy to run, even if it becomes predictable. And that was the Chiefs' success. So again, they're a team that's just a little ahead because they're seeing today's NFL. And until that changes or other teams catch up, they're still the team to beat. And as long as this duo stays together, because again, we have 13 new offensive coordinators this year in the NFL. It's no surprise that teams that make the playoffs year in and year out are teams that have the players, the offensive coordinators, and their players stay together, or head coaches and players. Breeze and Peyton, Schottenheimer and Wilson, Shanahan, Garoppolo. We see teams like that. That's who makes playoffs. That's who wins football games. So I like what I see from the Chiefs. I don't expect a regression unless they get unhealthy. They weren't even lucky. I mean, they were 5-4 in one-score games and 1-1 in games decided by 3 or less, and only had a +8 turnover margin. So again, it's all on the up for the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no regression here. Schedule don't get any more difficult, and maybe they'll even be healthier than last year. They were real healthy in 2018. Last year, they regressed. If they progress, forget about it. The team to beat. That's why it's tough for me to find a team to bet an AFC winner of the Super Bowl, because the value on the Chiefs just isn't there because they are the team to beat. And when you're top heavy in a league, you almost always have to go to the second tier teams to find value.
All right, so no value in betting the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, no value in them winning to bet the AFC. Those are kind of what the things you're referring to right there.
Yeah, exactly. And even season wins, I wouldn't go under. This team could win 13 games. But you need them to win 12 just for you to cash a ticket. And, that's what they've done 2 of the last 3 years. But, will that continue? Again, they could make the playoffs and not have to go like they did last year, where they were, 6-0 in the division. That's hard to do, to sweep your division like that. In fact, I don't think any other team in football did it, was able to go 6-0, except the Green Bay Packers, who got lucky. So again, if they lose a game or 2 in the division, it'll be hard to get 13 wins or so. So again, they could regress a little on that and still be the best team in the AFC.
Yeah, I'm looking at this AFC West, and I've heard a lot of hype surrounding the next 2 teams, and I just am not buying it. We'll start with the Chargers because they are 7-1 to win the division, and we'll talk about the Broncos here in a minute. But good grief, I just don't see it with this Chargers team. VR, I'll get your thoughts on it, and then we'll kick to VR, Tyrod Taylor, the Chargers, 7-1 to win the division, over 8 wins. What am I missing here? I don't see this Chargers team, and all of a sudden they have a new stadium, is going to just come to play. They're used to not playing with fans as it is, so I don't think that really matters as far as home field advantage goes.
I'm going to explain to you exactly why you see sharp bettors betting this Chargers team, looking for season win total over, thinking there's value on that 7-1, thinking there's value on maybe winning the AFC or nonsense like that. And because what do these betting syndicates do? They bet regression and progression every year, and long term it's profitable. Why not? Why change it? If it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. But if a team's bad, they may continue to get unlucky. Here's how unlucky the Chargers were last year. They were -17 in turnover margin. They had like 4 times the amount of fumbles lost than gained. I touched on that last week. When the ball hits the ground, it's 50-50 what color jersey falls on it. This team was that unlucky. And then they played 11 games that ended in 1-score victory. They went 2-9 in those games, won 18% of them. They played 5 games where it was decided by 3 points or less. They only won 1 of those. So all these sharp guys are expecting, how unlucky can you get? Luck always balances out. We always remember our bad beats, but we always wink when we get a lucky win. We just don't register it. But the bad beats, we could recount them all. Although long term, we all get just as many breaks as beats, pretty much. And I just think that's what they're betting on with the Chargers. And I just don't see it, because you got to have the personnel to get it done to even get lucky. So I think this team could not be unlucky and still lose football games. 8-8, that's asking a lot from a 5-win team.
I would agree. Marco, your thoughts on what VR said in regards to the San Diego Chargers? They're forever going to be the San Diego Chargers. I don't care what anybody says. No,
yeah,
all jokes aside.
San Diego, dude.
Yeah, I just feel like they're just not the LA Chargers, whether they're going to share a stadium with the Rams or not. I like them better. San Diego is just one of my favorite places. I think it's Qualcomm Stadium for life in my eyes. Marco, this team is got so many question marks across the board, from the head coach position in Anthony Lynn. I think that he has the ability to be a really good head coach. I just haven't seen very many moments of that. Now, granted, they had Phillip Rivers under center and they ran a different offense. Tyrod is a more athletic quarterback than Rivers. Are we going to see this Chargers team do well with him under center?
Well, Kelly, here's the thing. The turnovers, as VR alluded to, killed the Chargers last year. And the unluckiness of the fumbles, part of that was the offensive line play was not good. So you had Phillip Rivers getting, hit and fumbling. When there's a fumble in the backfield, it's not the 50-50 for the players to fall on it, because there's more defensive players in the backfield. The offensive linemen have their back to the play and don't see the ball on the ground as many times. Whereas if it's a fumble where a guy goes through the line and fumbles, you got all of those guys in the middle of the field, to fall on it. And then it is true 50-50. The difference with Tyrod Taylor is he's not going to turn the football over. That's the one thing throughout his career that's been the plus with him. Is he that flashy playmaker? No. But he's a game manager. And the one thing that he's going to bring to the table that you did not have with Phillip Rivers, when the play breaks down, Phillip Rivers was a statue back there. He's not scrambling for a first down. Whether it was he was too tired chasing 9 kids around all week before the game, he's not eluding defenders. Tyrod Taylor's going to keep plays alive. And let's not forget, they drafted a quarterback. They went after Justin Herbert. This is a spot where he's going to have trouble getting on the field, because if the Chargers stay in contention for the playoffs, they're not going to make the switch to the rookie. And I think Tyrod Taylor is a good fix. And look at the close games last year. Now, this is the only thing. 2 things keep me from going for the over and betting them on a season win total, because I think the Chargers are going to improve this season dramatically. And over the last 2 years, there was a lot of off-season love and expectations for the Chargers. They've had injuries on defense. The defense did not play good last year. If they shore that up and get better in the close games, they had 9 games last year that were decided by 7 points or less. You got to come out on the right side of some of those games. Now, is that because of the turnovers that did them in? Or as you said, Kelly, Anthony Lynn seems to have 1 or 2 games a year where you walk away with, what the hell was that? Whether he's kicking the football, and I know you do a podcast. Go ahead, give yourself a shameless plug for your you and John Murray's podcast. But what do you guys say? Kicking is for losers. And too often it costs them games. But look at the schedule. And I always look at the schedule when I'm doing season win totals. And if you look over the last 7 games of the season, it's a nightmare. 4 of the 7 games, they're on the road at Denver, Buffalo, at the Raiders, and at Kansas City. Those are 3 of the 4 are very tough. The Raiders, we'll talk about that in a moment. And then their other 3 games at home, you get the Patriots, You get Atlanta, who, if you remember last week, I think is going to be improved. And then you get Denver, who played a lot better at the end of the season last year. That's a tough final 7 games for this team. And to get to 8-8, that might be the stretch that does them in. They could end up more like a 7-9 team this season.
That's kind of what I'm seeing here. This is a definite funny thing you mentioned there. As you said it, I was like, oh my God, yes, when I bet on the Chargers, they had a kicking for losers moment. You know who else had a kicking for losers moment? Vance Joseph, but he's no longer the head coach of the Denver Broncos. Vic Fangio is. Broncos plus 1,000 to win the division. Over 7.5 wins minus 130. And now we all know that I grew up a Broncos fan. I like them when they win Super Bowls, and then I don't care about them and bet against them the rest of the time. So unless Peyton Manning is going to somehow come back and be the Broncos savior, I just don't see it. John Elway, God bless him. He is a reason why I love the Broncos. He made me a huge football fan, but he is absolutely terrible at picking quarterbacks. So to hear the confidence in Drew Lock does nothing for me. I had to hear the talking heads talk about him. They almost remind me, not quite because they don't have quite the big names, but they almost remind me of the Browns last year and all the hype surrounding them. Marco, do the Broncos have an outside shot to win this division? I don't think so. Over 7.5 wins. They're favored in 7 games in my book. I just don't love this team. Maybe next year?
Well, it's going to come down to Drew Lock. In public service announcement, if John Elway's in the room, do not let Kelly drink because she will tell him what she thinks about
this
the Broncos. This
is actually very true. It happened. We just talked about the Chargers. The last time that I ran into him was at the high limit room at the Aria. And yes, there were many drinks had. And yes, I was going to the game at the soccer stadium versus the Chargers. And he promised me if Trevor Siemian played like crap, he was going to bench him. No, he didn't. They got shut out in the soccer stadium. It was absolutely mortifying. Like I said, bet against Phillip Rivers, and what did he do? Put on an absolute and utter clinic.
Yeah. Kelly, you look at Drew Lock, and the reason for everybody being excited about the Broncos is this is another one of those quarterbacks that come in at the end of the season and drove the team to 4 out of 5 wins down the stretch. Is that going to carry over this year? And again, it was at the end of the season, so how much stock do we put in that? But what I am excited about is they went out and made some changes. Now, you alluded to they went out and got a running back, and I don't know that that's the running back you wanted to go out and get because Melvin Gordon, as we saw, can become a big distraction if things aren't going his way. What I do like is the way the defense played in the second half of the season as they started to get the schemes. Remember, this was a first-year head coach. He has a lot of zone schemes in his defense. And, it takes time to learn that. And they got better as the season went on. So year 2, you would expect the natural progression. If they can improve the defense, and if Drew Lock does improve at all from last year, and he didn't get a shot till the end of the season, they feel this is their quarterback of the future. It seems like I hear that every single year, except last year when he went out and signed.
Single year. It has been so
well, except last year.
Since Jay Cutler.
They signed Joe Flacco
Jake
last
Plummer,
year, for God's sake.
Trevor Siemian, Chad Kelly. I mean, I can keep going on and on and on. This is not a fun thing outside of Peyton Manning. Again, I love John Elway. I really do. He was so great in the late 90s that made me love this Broncos team. But I just feel like this is a play on the under, and this is not a team that I see Jerry Jeudy and all. I mentioned I really like Philip Lindsay. Melvin Gordon, we'll see. I just don't know.
Jury was on most people's draft boards the best wide receiver in the draft this year. And, if they get any offensive production to go with that defense, and we know, Mile High is a tough place to play, but again, without fans, it changes the dynamic of home field advantage. But still, it doesn't matter if there's fans in the stands or not. When you're playing there in December and it's cold as hell, you get some of these warm weather teams come in there. It's a huge advantage.
Actually, I'm going to ask you really quick before I kick it to VR, something I just thought of. that I actually should remember, one of the advantages, a home field advantage for Denver, is the altitude. Now, if we're talking different travel schedules, which we spoke about last week, we know that teams may be flying in the night before. They're not going to maybe be staying, they may only stay one night at a hotel. They may not be doing crazy walkthroughs. To get used to that altitude, I don't care what anybody says, takes about 2 days. Do you think that that could be an interesting play here on the Broncos in certain situations because the other team is not physically able to keep up?
I'll tell you where it's going to be a big advantage, Kelly, is going to be in the first few games of the season. We don't have preseason for these guys to get their sea legs, so to speak. When you hit that altitude in the second half of games, and that might be something to look at because at least Denver's practicing in it all the time. You might want to look at halftime wagers and look at the Broncos in the home games early in September because these teams are going to be fatigued not playing preseason. So that's a great point, Kelly.
All right, VR, your thoughts on this Denver Broncos team. Now, I know you said, I feel like you told me, and I could be very wrong, that you knew some sharp players that bet this over. Correct me on that. And then also your thoughts on the Broncos.
Yeah, and I disagree with it. I didn't bet it. I didn't use it. I didn't piggyback it. I'm not high on Denver. I mean, I get it. You expect them to continue to progress. In 2017, they won 5 games. 2018, 6 games. 2019, 7 games. So what's next? 8 games. I'm not too sure. Again, you got a new offensive coordinator there this year, and they're getting the pieces for offense and to make Locke's life a lot easier. They got, 2 wide receivers and a tight end in the first 4 rounds of the draft this year. It's a good move. But I'm not sold on what Locke can do just yet because, again, Marco touched on it. He went 4-1 down the stretch. That's what everyone's so excited about. But let's dig a little deeper and see who he did it against. He did it against his 4 wins came against the 21st, 26th, 28th, 31st ranked defense. His loss came against the 14th ranked defense. So if the schedule gets harder, how's he going to perform? Well, guess what? His schedule gets a lot harder. In fact, he's facing, I think, the number 1 toughest Russian defenses and top 5 pass. No, number 2 pass, number 3 rush, right along those lines. Top 5 rush, top 5 pass. Leave it at that. It doesn't get any easier for them. Until I see him actually do it against good defenses, I'm not going to bet them to progress. I could see why Sharps bet it. I got to see it before I believe it. I'm not sold.
All right. Are you sold on this new Las Vegas Raiders team? Unfortunately, they will be playing without fans. We all got that sad notification here. That's okay. I wasn't going to be a Raiders fan anyway. I was just going to go to games for entertainment purposes. 1,200 to win the division, but they have the same season win total as the Denver Broncos, 7.5. Juice a little bit to the over, plus 115 at the Superbook. Gianni, the Greek, tell me what your thoughts are on this Raiders team. I always hate when there's quarterback controversy in the NFL with a team. I feel like there's a lot of drama always surrounding that. Heard some good things out of camp about Mariota today. So I said I thought Mariota would be the starter by week 6 minus $1.20.
Yeah, listen, I'll tell you just what I did, and I bet this one. This is the season win total I bet, and I bet it under. Yeah, I live here. I want to see them do well, but I just don't think it's going to happen in their first season, unlike it did with the Golden Knights. And this is a very different season. Momentum has really slowed down. It has all over the country, obviously. But we were really excited out here when we started seeing that stadium getting built. You're driving by the Strip, and you're seeing it, and you know football's coming. And then, obviously, what's happened over these last 6 months has put a stop to that. And I thought with the momentum, there's that opportunity to catch lightning in a bottle and outperform your expectations. But with what's happened here in these last 6 months, I don't think that's the case. This team got really lucky last year to do what they did. They played 10 games decided by less than a touchdown, They won 7 of those. One score games, I think they were like, they won every one. Again, their schedule very hard this year as far as defenses. Their offense is going to be having a little bit of trouble. You touched on the quarterback controversy. Well, when you're going up against the second most difficult pass defenses, that's not a good look. And you may want to run the ball to get some help, but you're going up against the 6th toughest rush defenses also. So, yeah, again, they were very unhealthy last year. That should change, maybe get a little luckier, but I don't think it's going to be enough to produce, 8 wins for this team. I bet it under. If they surprise me, it won't be a bad thing. I live here, so I'll celebrate with it. You know me, I don't mind trashing a ticket.
There you go.
For
All
sentimental
right, Marco.
reasons.
For sentimental reasons, even better. Marco, your thoughts on this Raiders team? They had some moments of greatness last year, but as VR mentioned, they were banged up. I don't think Derek Carr is the answer for the Raiders. I don't think Marcus Mariota is probably the answer either, though he may do better in this system. Your thoughts on plus 1,200 to win the division and 7.5 as their season win total?
Okay, as far as the 7.5 season win total goes, Kelly, you're going to hear us talk many times on the show during the course of the season about value. We look for value, find the spots where it's at. Well, here's one of those spots. And I didn't officially pull the trigger, but I agree 100% with Ace on this one. It's under on the season win totals because Vegas knows they're going to get bets one way here, okay? This total probably should have been...
You absolutely nailed it. That's exactly what happens during hockey season. They get bets one way. It's on the Knights or not at all.
Exactly. And if you look on the board, if you have a line service, and I'll give a plug, go look at our free odds page. We show you all the books around Vegas. But then when you look offshore, when you look at hockey and you see the Vegas Golden Knights and see what the line is, there's a 20, 30 cent difference on a nightly basis at the casinos here in Vegas, especially the off-strip casinos where it's locals, Boyd stations. They're always pumped on the Vegas Golden Knights because they know that's all they're going to get is action there. And because of the success the Golden Knights had, people are going to bet the Raiders, thinking it's going to be the same success. Well, you're trying to compare apples to oranges. The Vegas Golden Knights were an expansion team. So you would say, well, that should be even worse, right? No, you got to pick good players from every team in the league. Now, they weren't the best players, but they were those, just notch below, and you couldn't protect everybody. So the players that weren't protected and got drafted by the Vegas Golden Knights, that first season, they had a chip on their shoulder. They had something to prove because their team didn't believe in them enough to protect them in the expansion draft. And it was a brand new team. Everybody was excited. Yes, we got a brand new stadium, and there's going to be excitement for that. But it's like, we're picking up somebody else's girlfriend, okay? It's another team that was already there that's coming here. The Raiders broke up with Oakland. Now they're coming here to Vegas to spend time with us. And for not having fans in the stands, they caught the worst break of all. Because when you move to a new city and you get a state-of-the-art stadium like they built for the Raiders, you want to have fans. But I will give Mark Davis a nice shout out where a lot of teams are talking about reduced, maybe 25% capacity or whatever to still get revenue from fans. He's come out and said no fans. If it's not all the fans, it's no fans because he didn't think it would be fair to season ticket holders for 75% of them to get shut out. And that's,
I would agree with you. Hey, I think that you're right. Listen, there's a lot of college teams, NFL teams, 25%, 50%, whatever it is. You're right. I think in the inaugural season, Mark Davis didn't want to just say, hey, so sorry, 50% or 75% of you guys don't get to come. And we know who would all get to go is the people that paid a ton of money to go. And that's just the sad reality. And I think actually from a PR perspective, that probably makes the most sense because it's all or none. I think you hit the nail on the head. Any final thoughts on the Raiders?
Yeah, go ahead and take under. And when your two options are Derek Carr, which I think this is make or break season for him. If he doesn't show drastic improvement, and let's face it, he hasn't been the same since he was having an MVP-like season, taking the Raiders to the playoffs a few years ago, and then he had that, leg injury that ended his season, killed the Raiders. They had no backup quarterback at that point, and he's never been the same since then. If he doesn't get it done this year, you're going to see a new quarterback in Las Vegas next year. And I don't think Marcus Mariota is the answer. Maybe Gruden can get more out of him, and we've seen it sometimes where there's a change of scenery. The guy that replaced him, Ryan Tannehill. Well, we don't have a Derrick Henry in the backfield to help out here at Oakland. Oakland. How many times are we going to call them Oakland this year?
It doesn't matter.
The Raiders.
It's the Washington Redskins, the San Diego Chargers, the Oakland Raiders. Even when the Raiders were in LA, I still called them the Oakland Raiders. It's just going to be one of those things that's just going to keep happening. Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to recap everybody's best bets. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us the last couple hours. We'll see you in a few. September 2020 is a historic month. We have baseball, soccer, hockey, horse racing, basketball, and now football. For the first time ever, every major sport is being played at once. This week only, we're giving you 30 days of all access with your favorite WagerTalk or Sports Memo handicapper for just $199. The normal price there, $349. So what do you get with the WagerTalk 30-day all access for less than $7 a day? You get every play released from your favorite capper. No coupon needed, just $199 each. And this offer is valid through midnight Saturday.
This Saturday, it's the 146th running of the Kentucky Derby. Will Tiz the Law make it 2 in a row in the Triple Crown? Yes, it's the second leg of the Triple Crown, as Tiz the Law already won the Belmont earlier this summer. Join me on Saturday as I attack the Kentucky Derby. If you remember, in 2017, I advised my clients to invest $390 worth of wagers in the Kentucky Derby. Well, that $390 investment brought back over $9,000 for myself and my clients. If you want to join me on Saturday and bet the Kentucky Derby exactly how I am doing it, pick up my Kentucky Derby package over at WagerTalk.com. Not only will you get my exact wagers and betting strategies for the race, I'll also include my top sports pick for Saturday in either football, baseball, or basketball. Join me this Saturday for my Kentucky Derby package over at WagerTalk.com, just $39.
I appreciate you guys hanging out with us the last couple hours. This last few minutes, I'm just going to break down the best bets from Marco and VR. I'll have our producer put those on the screen, and I'll just read through them in case you guys missed anything. Look, Marco, New England to make the playoffs. Yes, minus 160. Buffalo under 9.5 wins. Miami under 6 wins. Baltimore under 11.5 wins. Don't forget, he also has a flyer on Belichick to win AP Coach of the Year at 18-1. Let's see. We got Pittsburgh to make the playoffs. Yes, minus 155. Denver over 7.5 wins. Pittsburgh to win the AFC at 12-1. Let's kick it over to VR's favorite bets for the AFC. We've got season win totals under 5, minus 170 for Jacksonville. Under 7.5, minus 125 for the Raiders. Under 7, minus 120 for the Jets. We've also got some leans. Now, VR didn't play these, but these are some suggestions for you guys. Under 11.5 wins, minus 140 for Baltimore. Under 8 for the Chargers. And the Steelers, we're all in agreement here. Steelers to win the AFC North, plus 350 currently, plus 300 over at the Westgate. Again, guys, Appreciate you guys hanging out every single week. We hear your comments in the chat. Sounds like everybody wants to have the show a little bit earlier. I just got a text from our wannabe producer, Gianni Detroit. He thinks we should have the show earlier. So you guys drop it in the comments. Tell us what you want. We're trying to make everybody happy in this very interesting, unprecedented year. Guys, we always appreciate you. Thank you for breaking down the AFC conference with us tonight. We're going to be back next week, NFL Week 1. I cannot wait to kick off the season. Until then, bet on it.
If you like betting on horses, be sure to check out WagerTalk.com's own Sig, who zeroes on one racetrack at a time, offering his handicapping skills. Visit his homepage daily for his top selection in each race free. If you want all his selections for that track, you can get his full racing report for just $9.